What would make someone walk away from the city that never sleeps and never look back? That is exactly what is happening right now. A growing wave of New Yorkers, bankers, tech workers, families, and even lifelong Manhattan diehards, are packing up their entire lives and moving nearly 10,000 miles away to a small island nation called Singapore. And here is the part that shocks people the most. When you ask them if they would ever move back to New York, the answer is almost always the same. No. Not now, not ever. In this video, we are going to break down exactly why. We are covering 10 real reasons, one by one, that explain why so many people are choosing Singapore over the city that used to define the American dream. Some of these reasons might surprise you. A few of them might even make you want to book a flight yourself. So stick around, because by the end of this, you will understand something that thousands of people already know firsthand. Point 1. The cost of living actually makes sense. Let's start with the reason almost everyone brings up first: money. In New York, rent has become almost a joke, except nobody is laughing. A basic one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan can easily run $4,000 a month, and that is before you add utilities, parking, and the constant surprise fees that seem to appear out of nowhere. Groceries are expensive, eating out is expensive, even doing laundry can feel like a luxury tax. People living in New York often describe a feeling of running on a treadmill that never stops, working incredibly hard just to stay in place. Now compare that to Singapore. Yes, private housing in prime areas can be pricey, but the public housing system, known as the HDB system, offers clean, safe, well-built apartments that the majority of the population actually lives in, and they are dramatically more affordable relative to income than anything comparable in Manhattan or Brooklyn. Beyond housing, everyday costs like public transportation, healthcare, and even many groceries are noticeably cheaper and far more predictable. There are no surprise city taxes stacking on top of state taxes stacking on top of federal taxes. Singapore runs a much simpler, flatter tax system, and for many professionals, the amount they get to keep from every paycheck is significantly higher. What people describe again and again is a feeling of breathing room. In New York, money disappears before you even notice it. In Singapore, people say they can actually save, actually invest, actually plan 5 or 10 years ahead instead of just surviving the next 30 days. That single shift, from surviving to planning, is one of the biggest emotional differences people report after making the move. It is not just about having more money in the bank. It is about the mental weight that lifts when you are no longer constantly calculating whether you can afford your own life. Point 2. Safety you can actually feel. This is the point that tends to hit people the hardest emotionally, especially parents. In New York, safety is something you are always managing. You are aware of which subway car to avoid late at night, which streets to walk quickly through, keeping your phone tucked away, staying alert, always scanning. It becomes such a normal part of daily life that people barely notice they are doing it anymore, until they leave. Singapore flips that entire experience. It is consistently ranked among the safest cities on Earth. Walking alone at 2 in the morning through the streets or taking the subway late at night is completely normal and unremarkable. Parents let their children take public transportation to school by themselves at surprisingly young ages, something that would cause serious anxiety for most parents back in New York. Petty crime, theft, and violent crime rates are extraordinarily low, and it is not because of luck. It comes from strict laws, heavy enforcement, and a culture that genuinely values order and respect for shared spaces. People who have made the move often describe an almost physical change in how they feel walking around. The tension in their shoulders relaxes. The constant background alertness fades away. One family interviewed about their move said their biggest realization was not something dramatic, it was simply noticing they had stopped flinching at loud noises or fast footsteps behind them. That kind of everyday peace of mind is incredibly hard to put a price tag on, but once people experience it, they say they cannot imagine giving it up again. Safety stops being something you think about and just becomes the background of your life. Point 3. Cleanliness that changes how you see a city. New York has a reputation, and honestly, it has earned it. Trash bags piled on sidewalks, the unmistakable smell in certain subway stations during summer, rats that have practically become unofficial city mascots. It is part of the grit that some people romanticize, but for those living there day after day, it wears on you. Singapore is famously, almost obsessively clean. Chewing gum is heavily restricted specifically to prevent it from being stuck on sidewalks and public property. Littering carries serious fines that are actually enforced, not just written on a sign and ignored. Streets are washed regularly, public parks are meticulously maintained, and even public housing developments look freshly painted and cared for. There is a national pride in cleanliness that touches everything from the airport to the smallest neighborhood hawker center. For people moving from New York, this is one of those differences that seem small on paper but ends up mattering enormously in daily life. It changes how you feel stepping outside your front door every single morning. Instead of navigating around garbage or holding your breath near a subway grate, you are walking through spaces that feel genuinely cared for. Several transplants have mentioned that this cleanliness translates into an unexpected sense of dignity, a feeling that the city they live in respects them, and in turn, they take more pride in respecting it back. It becomes a quiet, constant reminder that they made the right decision. Point 4. A healthcare system that does not bankrupt you. Healthcare in the United States is a stress point for nearly everyone, but in a city as expensive as New York, it becomes even more intense. Even people with decent insurance describe anxiety around doctor visits, wondering what a bill might look like, delaying care because the deductible has not been met yet, or avoiding the emergency room out of pure fear of the cost. Singapore operates one of the most efficient and highly regarded healthcare systems in the entire world. It combines government subsidies, mandatory savings accounts specifically for medical expenses known as Medisave, and affordable insurance options that work together so that quality care remains accessible without the financial terror that so many Americans have simply accepted as normal. Wait times for both routine and specialist care tend to be shorter, hospitals are modern and highly rated internationally, and the overall system is frequently ranked among the best on the planet by global health organizations. For families especially, this reason alone can be the deciding factor in a move. Knowing that a broken arm, a surgery, or a serious diagnosis will not instantly threaten your financial future is an enormous relief that is difficult to fully appreciate until you have lived under the opposite system. People who have made the switch often say they used to accept constant low-grade anxiety about health as just a normal part of adult life in America. In Singapore, that anxiety fades, and it gets replaced with something most Americans rarely experience: genuine trust that the system will actually take care of them when they need it most. Point 5. Public transportation that actually works. Ask any New Yorker about the subway and you will likely get a sigh before a single word comes out. Delays, sudden service changes, unbearable heat on the platforms in summer, and unpredictable reliability have become such a running joke that an entire subculture of memes exists around it. People plan extra time into every commute simply because they have learned not to trust the system. Singapore's subway system, known as the MRT, is often held up globally as one of the gold standards for public transportation. Trains are clean, air-conditioned, frequent, and remarkably punctual. The entire island is connected efficiently, and getting from one end to the other rarely takes more than an hour even at rush hour. Combine that with an equally reliable and affordable bus network, and owning a car becomes almost unnecessary for most residents, which itself saves enormous amounts of money and stress. For people used to New York's unpredictable system, this difference can feel almost unbelievable at first. Many transplants say it took them months to stop building in extra buffer time for delays that simply never happened. That reliability adds up to something bigger than convenience. It gives people back hours of their week and a level of trust in their daily routine that they did not realize they were missing. When your commute stops being a daily gamble, your entire relationship with the city around you starts to shift towards something calmer and far more livable. Point 6. Career opportunities in a booming hub. New York has always been a career capital, especially in finance, but the landscape has been shifting. Singapore has quietly, and now not so quietly, become one of the most important financial and business hubs in the entire Asia-Pacific region. Major banks, technology companies, and multinational corporations have expanded or relocated regional headquarters there, drawn by political stability, favorable tax policies, and Singapore's strategic position connecting East and West. For professionals in finance, technology, and international business, this shift has opened enormous opportunities. Salaries remain highly competitive, corporate tax rates are attractive to employers, and personal income tax rates are substantially lower than what most high earners pay in New York once state and city taxes are combined. Many professionals report that their real take-home pay increased significantly after the move, even in cases where their listed salary looked similar on paper. Beyond the numbers, there is also a sense of being at the center of something growing rather than something plateauing. Singapore's economy has been expanding steadily, and its role as a bridge between massive markets like China, India, and Southeast Asia gives professionals exposure to opportunities and industries that simply are not as accessible from New York anymore. For ambitious people who want their career to keep moving forward, Singapore increasingly feels like the place where the next chapter of global business is actually being written, and being there in person carries real advantages. Point 7. World-class food without the insane prices. New York's food scene is legendary, there is no denying that. But legendary also comes with legendary prices. A decent dinner out for two people can easily run over $100 once you add tax and tip, and that is before anyone orders a second drink. Singapore is often called a food paradise, and it earns that title. Hawker centers, which are essentially organized outdoor food courts filled with individual stalls, serve incredible dishes from Chinese, Malay, Indian, and fusion cuisines, often for just a few dollars a plate. Some of these hawker stalls have even earned Michelin recognition while still charging prices that would be considered a steal anywhere else in the world. Beyond the hawker centers, Singapore also has an incredible range of fine dining, international cuisine, and everything in between, giving residents the best of both worlds, affordable daily eating and spectacular options for special occasions. For people moving from New York, this becomes one of the most delightful surprises of daily life. Instead of food being an occasional treat you budget carefully for, it becomes something you can enjoy freely and often, without guilt. Many transplants describe eating out multiple times a week simply because it is cheaper and more convenient than cooking, something that would have felt financially reckless back in New York. Food, it turns out, becomes not just sustenance but one of the simple daily joys that makes the entire move feel worth it. Point 8. A political and economic environment that feels stable. Regardless of personal political views, many people who have relocated mention a shared feeling, a sense of stability and predictability that felt increasingly rare in the United States. Singapore is known for consistent governance, low corruption, clear long-term planning, and policies that tend to prioritize practical outcomes over short-term political battles. This stability translates into everyday confidence. Business regulations are clear and consistently enforced, infrastructure projects get completed on schedule, and the government invests heavily and visibly in things like education, housing, and technology. For people who felt exhausted by constant uncertainty, shifting policies, and political tension back home, Singapore's approach can feel like a genuine relief. It is worth being honest that this stability comes with trade-offs, including less political dissent and tighter social controls than many Americans are used to. But for a large number of transplants, especially those focused on building a career, raising a family, and planning long-term, the predictability outweighs those concerns. They describe being able to make 5-year and 10-year plans with real confidence, something that felt almost impossible amid the constant news cycle churn and uncertainty they experienced in New York. That sense of a steady hand guiding the bigger picture allows people to focus their energy on their own lives instead of bracing for the next disruption. Point 9. Green spaces and a genuine connection to nature. New York has Central Park, and it is genuinely beautiful, but it is one significant green space surrounded by miles of concrete, steel, and noise. Access to real, immersive nature usually requires planning a trip out of the city entirely. Singapore has taken a radically different approach, often described as a city in a garden rather than simply a city with some gardens. Massive nature reserves, rooftop gardens, vertical greenery climbing up the sides of buildings, and enormous parks like Gardens by the Bay are woven directly into the urban landscape. It is entirely normal to walk out of a modern office tower and find yourself immediately surrounded by lush tropical plants, walking trails, or even wildlife. The government has made urban greening a core part of national planning for decades, not an afterthought. For people who grew up craving more connection to the outdoors, this transforms daily life in a meaningful way. Instead of nature being something you schedule a trip for, it becomes something you walk through on the way to work. Many transplants describe feeling calmer and more grounded simply from being surrounded by greenery constantly rather than occasionally. It turns out that when nature is not a rare escape but a constant companion woven into everyday city life, something genuinely shifts in how peaceful and balanced people feel, even while living in a fast-paced, highly urban environment. Point 10. A genuine sense of community and belonging. This last reason is less about statistics and more about feeling, but it might be the most powerful one of all. New York is famous for its energy, but that same intensity can also breed isolation. People often describe feeling surrounded by millions of others while still feeling completely alone, rushing past each other, rarely making eye contact, rarely slowing down enough to connect. Singapore, despite being a dense, modern global city, is often described by transplants as having a surprisingly strong sense of community. Neighborhoods built around public housing developments naturally encourage interaction between neighbors. Multiculturalism is not just tolerated but genuinely celebrated, with Chinese, Malay, Indian, and Western influences blending together in daily life, festivals, and food. Many newcomers say they were welcomed with a warmth and openness they did not expect, and that expat and local communities alike tend to be tightly knit and supportive. For families in particular, this sense of belonging becomes incredibly important. Parents describe their children forming close friendships quickly, and adults describe building real, lasting friendships faster than they ever did in New York, where the pace of life often left little room for deep connection. In the end, cities are not just about buildings, salaries, or subway systems, they are about the people around you. For so many who have made this move, Singapore did not just offer a better lifestyle on paper, it offered something they had been quietly missing for years, a real sense of home. So there you have it, 10 powerful reasons why so many people are leaving New York behind and choosing to build their lives in Singapore instead. Lower cost of living, real safety, incredible cleanliness, dependable healthcare, transportation that actually works, booming career opportunities, unbeatable food, genuine stability, beautiful green spaces, and perhaps most importantly, a real sense of community and belonging. When you add all of that together, it becomes a lot easier to understand why so many transplants say the same thing when asked if they would ever move back. Not a chance. Every city has its own magic, and New York will always hold a special place in the hearts of millions of people. But for a growing number of families and professionals, Singapore has quietly become the place where life simply feels better, calmer, safer, and more balanced. If this video gave you a new perspective, or even made you start dreaming about a change of your own, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you ever make a move like this yourself, or is New York still home for you no matter what? And if you want more real stories like this one, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.